Welcome everyone. My name is Payal Tandon. I am one of the co-founders of e-GMAT. I will be your host today. And in this webinar, we're going to talk about number properties and specifically divisibilities and remainders section of number properties. And what we're going to do in this session is make sure that you learn what is the right approach towards quant. And yes, we are taking a very limited scope topic, divisibility and remainders. That's a pretty wide topic in number properties context. However, in the grand scheme of quant, there are a lot more other concepts as well. But whatever you learn from this webinar, you will be able to apply across all sections of quant. So yes, we are going to talk about, so you will be able to gain those insights. Now, in order to prepare you well for the session, we have shared these concept files with you, and we just to make sure that you understand what are prime numbers and whatnot. So I hope that all of you had a chance to go through these concept files. And let me bring back the information about the free sessions. Now, every let me see, where is that here? Every weekend we conduct these webinars in which we tell you how is it that you should be preparing for your how is it that you should be preparing for your GMAT, how is it that you should be regardless of whichever stage you're at. So next Saturday we will be conducting a webinar on reading comprehension, in which we'll talk about what should be your approach towards, all right, this is not the right one here, in which we'll talk about what should be your approach towards reading comprehension. So definitely register for this webinar, and the registration link is coming right up. In this, we'll talk about, okay, are you preparing for reading comprehension in the right manner or not? Next Sunday, we will be conducting a session on how is it that you should be, where are you at in terms of your quant preparation? If you have just started your quant and you want to know what should you focus on, this workshop is perfect for you. If you have been preparing for quant for quite some time and you want to just know, okay, how much have I progressed in quant, then also this workshop is absolutely perfect for you. If you're just about to take the test, then also this workshop is truly perfect for you. Why? Because this would act like a mini mock test, which is proctored with an expert who's going to give you insights that are personalized to you. So definitely register for both of these sessions. Okay. All right, now let me also bring back the poll in terms of in which I asked you as to when are you taking your test. So majority of you, I'm trying to get that poll here, majority of you are actually planning to take the test, or actually haven't taken your test date yet, which is absolutely fine. Now, quite a few of you are taking the test within the next 15 days. So again, this session will be an eye-opening session for you, either indicating that yes, you are headed in the right direction, or telling you that yes, you just have to make these little tweaks in your preparation so that you can maximize your score in the test. So again, I welcome all of you, and I apologize for the little bit of a mess up early on in this session. I'm going to change the presentation pane, and you are going to see a slide that says purpose of this session. So as soon as you start to see the slide, click on yes, so that I know that the layout has stabilized at your end. All right, sounds good. Okay, now the purpose of this session is, again, making sure that you understand what should be the right way to approach GMAT Quant. And essentially, there are two main things with GMAT Quant. The first one is, you need to have that sound understanding of the basics. That's very, very important. Many a times, students think that they just need to know the concepts, right? But it's the extent to which you need to know the concepts that really matters in the end. Do you know the concepts inside out? And I want to make, okay, I just got one question here. Is anyone speaking currently? I just want to make sure all of you can hear me clearly, right? Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I'm not muted right now. Okay, all right. So coming back to this, you need to have that 100% clarity of concepts. And as we go along in this session, you're going to understand what does it mean to know the concept and to know the concept inside out. What's the difference between the two? We'll talk about that. The second thing that's very important is a structured approach to solving questions. You need to have a very solid approach to approach any kind of problem solving question, to solve any kind of data sufficiency question. And that approach needs to be such that can be repeated on any kind of question, regardless of the topic that that question is from. And that's another thing which we're going to talk about in this session. Okay. Now, how will we progress through this session? We will take up some data sufficiency questions. Now, how many of you are familiar with data sufficiency questions? All right, that sounds good. Almost all of you who are responding do understand what a data sufficiency question is. Now, we will be solving 3 data sufficiency questions up front. These are going to be difficult questions. Again, we'll simply solve those, okay? And then we will start from the very basics. We'll take you through some warm-up exercises in which we'll test your conceptual understanding. And then we will solve some problem-solving questions, again, easier problem-solving questions. And then we'll go into difficult problem-solving questions, which are 700 level. And then towards the end, we will bring back the same data sufficiency questions that you solved up front in the beginning of the session. We're going to take those up again towards the end. This time, we're going to solve and discuss these questions in detail. So essentially, the way this session is organized is that you first just solve certain difficult questions so that you know, okay, are you able to solve these questions? What level of confidence? So as you're solving these, I want you to think about what level of confidence do you have while you're solving these questions, right? And then as we build your ability, as we build your conceptual knowledge through warm up, through these process problem solving questions, and then as you answer more difficult questions and then come back to these most difficult questions again, you will see a marked improvement in your ability to solve these questions. Okay, so I want you to, this is what my hypothesis is. I want you to tell me towards the end of the session whether my hypothesis is true or not. Okay, so let's get right into it. And how I would, I'm not going to time you for these questions, right? It's not a test. We are not in that strict timing environment. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you all so I'm going to see, okay, when 50% of the class has already made the selection, I am going to give you a little bit of a heads up that you need to now put in your answers, and we'll take it like that, okay? So let me show you the poll here. Do you guys see still solving here? Please click on still solving because that tells me how many of you are actively engaged in this particular question. Okay, let's get this number to at least 120. We have about 187 participants to be exact. So let's get this number to around 120. And before we go into solving these questions, I'm going to ask you a few questions just so I understand where you feel you lack in quant. So okay, I'm going to end this for now. All right, so tell me, where do you see problems in quant today in terms of your preparation? What do you think you need to build upon in quant? It could be with regards to topics. It could be with regards to I face problems in doing such and such stuff. Okay, deciphering, cut out silly mistakes, divisibility and remainders. All right, you are at the right place then. Data sufficiency, ability to resolve 700 plus questions, geometry and coordinate geometry, concepts and strategy solving in less than 2 minutes. Okay, word problems, combinations and permutations, C trap, pressure of time. All right, speed. Okay, so it's a pretty big mixed bag now. All right, now just a little housekeeping tip. Whenever I ask you a question, please put in the responses to those questions in the polls that I open up for you. For questions that you have from us, post those questions in the Q&A pod. Okay, and again, supporting us in this webinar is Whipple. He's our quant subject matter expert, and he will be answering your questions in the Q&A pod. Okay. All right. Choosing efficient hypothesis numbers to test the statements. All right. Sounds good. Now, I'm going to ask this question again towards the end, and I'm going to ask my questions towards the end of the session would be that what is it that you think you need to be improving in quant in order to get to that 700 level, 730 plus level? Okay. All right. So let's get going with this session right here. I'm going to now show you the first question here. This is question number 8 on the screen. Go ahead and solve this. All right, last 30 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. And I'm going to give you the poll for the next question. All right. Can you please click on still solving for question number 9? And again, for those of you who are not able to understand the questions or who don't as yet, who are not comfortable solving these questions, it's okay. We're going to be discussing everything from the basics to towards the end to these questions. So don't worry, just give it a shot. Just understand, even if you spend the time in writing down that, okay, I don't know how to go beyond this particular step, or I don't know how to even approach it, that's also sufficient. Because again, what we are doing is you start off and then how is it that you should be learning through any particular concept set? That is what we're going to talk about. Okay, so don't worry. All right, I'm going to show you question number 9 now. Go ahead and solve this. All right, last 30 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, and now here comes the last question here, question number 10, the last question in the first set of three, in the first set. Please click on still solving. All right, and here comes question number 10 on your screen. Go ahead. All right, last few seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So I'll share the results of the polls later on when we do come back to these questions again. But for now, tell me, how was this experience? And I'm going to ask you certain questions. Tell me, how did you feel when you were solving these questions? Little hard, painful. Okay. Easy one, wasn't able to solve it. Difficult, good, hard. Okay. Last one was harder, daunting. Okay. All right. That's okay. It's okay to feel this way right now. It's absolutely fine. And I'm hoping that as we go through this session, you will be as we start talking about content, as we start covering the approaches, you will be able to see, you will get another chance to solve these questions. Okay, so it's absolutely fine regarding how you felt. Now tell me, what was your level of confidence? And I want you to quantify those that the feeling that you went through right now. Quantify it in terms of your level of confidence while solving these three questions. How confident did you feel? So I see there's only one person who felt 100% confidence, confident. That's good. That's good. And then 12 of you who felt 80% confident. Quite a few of you felt about almost similar number of people felt 50% or less than 50% confident. Okay. All right. And again, I'm going to ask you this question again towards the end. Okay. Now tell me, what is your level of confidence in divisibility and remainders concepts? What's your level of confidence in divisibility and remainders concepts? Regardless of whether or not you were confident in solving these questions, but just tell me, what's your level of confidence in divisibility and remainders concepts? Okay, so just I want you to make a note of this disparity in how confident you feel in terms of the conceptual understanding and how that confidence relates right now to your ability to solve the 700 level questions based on those concepts. Okay, so tell me, what do you infer from this data? Instead of my telling you what the inference is, what do you infer from this data? When it came to the level of confidence in solving the questions, the level of confidence was really low. But when it comes to your understanding of the concept, it appears that you are a little bit more confident. More people are more confident in terms of the conceptual understanding. So when we say that, remember what I said up front, that you need to have 100% understanding of the concepts, right? So the fact that you feel that you're confident in the concepts, but that's not translating into your performance, that tells me two things. One is you're not conceptually as strong as you think you are. Okay. Secondly, you don't have a good you don't have a good idea of the approach that you need to use. Okay. So again, I know you wouldn't want to hear that, but that's a very strong inference that I can draw based on the performance and based on your inputs. And it's absolutely fine, because the first step in fixing a problem is identifying what the problem is, right? And that's what we are doing here together as a group. Okay, so thank you very much. I'm really happy that you were able to identify that there is something that needs to be fixed. Okay, so I'm really glad that you were able to arrive at similar inferences. So that's good. All right. So now let's start learning. Okay, we've done diagnostics, right? We've run the diagnostics. We figured out what the problem is. Now let's start fixing that problem, and we're going to fix the problem on divisible on this remainders concept, divisibility and remainders, in this session. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you some basic questions on divisibility and remainders, and I'm going to give you feedback on your current conceptual knowledge. That's what we're going to do. Now, I'm not going to give you detailed solutions. We're just going to solve questions in order for you to understand in detail as to how these concepts work, you'll have to look at our quant course, in which we have a full module of divisibility and remainders. Okay. All right. So first of all, are you all excited about learning? I know for some of you, this wasn't a very good experience because it was painful. You weren't able to solve the questions, but I want you to erase all of that. I want you to be confident that, okay, yes, I'm here to learn. Okay, so good. All right, so let's get to our first question. I'm going to show you the poll, and you can start solving it. I'm going to show you the poll in the meanwhile so that you can put in your answers. There you go. All right, last few seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. So the correct answer here is choice B. So about 71% of the class got this correct. Now, what is the divisibility rule for the number 3? It is that the sum of digits should be divisible by 3, right? Now, if Z is a 3-digit number, then what and whose digits are consecutive numbers in increasing order. So what we can do is we translate this information in terms of that, okay, the digits of Z are x, x plus 1, and x plus 2. Anybody has any issues with this translation? What we've done over here is we've simply taken what's given to us in the question statement and we have translated that into this thing over here, that the digits of the hundred digit is x, the tens is x plus 1 and then x plus 2, right? So, all right, now or vice versa, it doesn't matter. Why? Because what you have to take is the sum of the digits, right? So when you take the sum of the digits, you have x plus 1 plus x plus 2. When you do that, what you get is 3x plus 3, which means that you're able to take 3 as common, and what you get is x plus 1. Now regardless of what x is, this number is always going to be divisible by 3. That's why choice B is the correct answer. Now there were quite a few of you who selected choice A as the correct answer, and there were some of you who even selected C and who were not able to make a selection. So my feedback to you is, actually, let me ask you, for those of you who did not solve the question in this manner, or who made a mistake, tell me, where did you falter? Because that's the feedback for you, because you need to fix that problem in terms of your conceptual understanding. So tell me, why did you falter over here? I forgot the translation to simplify how to solve, putting up the wrong choice. I took 5 to 6 examples, understanding the question. So what's happening over here is there are some of you who didn't read the question statement properly and you missed this consecutive numbers part. Now, for you, the conceptual understanding with regards to divisibility rule of 3 may not have been an issue, but the issue was really that you didn't read the question statement properly. So it's an approach issue, right? So again, you have to see why when you look at a solution, and again, this is a very easy question, but even though it's an easy question, there are so many different things that are coming out as to why you have made mistakes. Some of you have made mistakes because you didn't know the concept. I can see that some of you are saying that, okay, didn't know the divisibility rule. So for you, that conceptual understanding needs to be at that 100% level, right? Some of you are saying that you didn't read the question statement properly. Some of you are saying that you read it, but you were not able to translate it, so you didn't know what to do with that. That's a process skill issue. Okay, that's an issue with regards to your ability to translate information that's given to you in the question statement into mathematics that you need to in order to solve the question. So that's a translate process skill issue. So I want you to understand, and this is not just applicable, as I said, this is not just applicable to number properties, it's applicable across the board for all of quant. Whenever you're solving questions, whenever you're learning something, make sure that you identify the right cause behind you making a mistake, behind that mistake, and then fix that cause. So that causality is very, very important. Okay. Now, there are some of you who took examples, practical examples. Now, yes, that might work, but frankly, for you to take practical examples, you need to be at that level wherein you know what kind of examples to take, right? What if you take an example in which you end up taking examples which in which inadvertently you always end up getting the number divisible by 3. In this case, yes, any example that you take, because of the nature of this, you will always uh, get it that it's divisible by 3. But what if the question was something else, right? In let's say it was whether it's divisible by 9 or not, right? In that case, you may end up not, you need to know how to intelligently select practical examples, right? So again, All right, so can everyone hear me now? Sorry, there was some internet issues at my end. Can everyone hear me now? All right, sounds good. So where did I lose all of you? At what point did I lose all of you? 5 minutes ago, what was I talking about? Okay, so we did finish this, right? Oh, long back. Wow. Choosing intelligently. All right. So again, what I was talking about was that yeah, so we almost completed our approach. So taking examples might not be a valid approach. Yes, good. So I hope that all of you got that point. So let's now go to our next question, and there it goes. Please click on still solving. Okay, let's go ahead and solve this. All right, last few seconds. Let's put in your answers, please. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. And oh, can you put in your answers once again, please, for this question? Okay, I'm going to end it, and here are your responses. So about 60% of the class has selected choice A, which is the correct choice, and then about 36% of the class has selected choice C. So it may be divisible and it's not divisible. And this is where this is where it's important to understand the picking up of practical examples, right? And this question is an example wherein you should select numbers to put in, but the selection has to be solid. Okay, now what's the divisibility rule for the number 4? Tell me, what's the divisibility rule for the number 4? The last two digits of the number should be divisible by 4. Absolutely, right? So the last two digits should be divisible by 4. Now, what could be, so first of all, the number z, what are the options for that number? Either z is odd or z is even, right? When z is odd, then will the number be divisible by 4? When z is odd, the number will not be divisible by 4, right? So in that case, you already have cases in which this number z is not divisible by 4. Now the question is, are there, so definitely choice B is out the door. Z is always divisible by 4. So for the 26 of you who selected choice B, tell me, did you not know the divisibility rule for 4? Or did you not select appropriate example? Did you not consider the case that z could be odd? Tell me, why is it that you faltered here? And again, it's very important to know why you're making the mistake, right? So here, this is a conceptual issue. For those of you who didn't remember the rule, that's a conceptual issue, which means that you need to build your conceptual understanding, right? Did not select an example. So if you did not select the example of z as an odd number, this means that you failed to apply the process skill of considering all cases. So if you didn't consider all cases that, and one of the cases is that z is an odd number, then that's a process skill issue. Okay, so again, there are two reasons why you selected choice B. And again, based on the reason that you selected choice B, you basically need to fix the problem. Okay. All right, now let's consider the next case in which Z is an even number. Now, this is where you pick out numbers, keeping in mind the divisibility rule, that is, it is the last two digits need to be divisible by 4. Keeping in mind this divisibility rule, you essentially pick out some numbers, right? So the first case could be that the last two digits are actually divisible by 4. For example, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? There are cases in which the number has consecutive digits, that the consecutive numbers form the digits, and basically you have the last two digits that are divisible by 4. Now, there are also cases in which the last two digits may not be divisible by 4. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4. In this case, 34 is not divisible by 4. So just think about what is it that we are doing. We are picking up a concept that divisibility rule for 4 is such that that last two digits should be divisible by 4. Then we are taking up appropriate all the possible cases that Z could be odd or Z could be even. Even in the second case where Z could be even, we are taking up other two cases that are possible, that the last two digits may be divisible by 4 and the last two digits may not be divisible by 4, while meeting the condition in the question statement that the digits in this four-digit number are consecutive numbers. So look at how your conceptual understanding, your ability to approach the question while applying these process skills, all of that comes together for you to be able to solve the question in the right manner. Okay, and that's why it's your conceptual understanding, it's your process ability to apply process skills. All of that comes into picture even when you're solving a simple question such as this one. Does this make sense? Are you able to understand how all of these skills together lead you to be able to solve, to be able to get to the right accuracy level? It's not just concepts, it's not just the approach. And again, think about this, there are no shortcuts here, there are no tricks here. It's all solid approach to solve questions. Okay, all right, so now let's go to our question number 3. This is a slightly easier question, and here you go. Go ahead and solve it. All right, so almost all of you are selecting choice C, and choice C is the correct answer. So I'm not sure if because I was broadcasting the results, that's why you all selected choice C, or if truly you knew that the answer is C. Again, this is, as I said, this is a relatively straightforward question. You don't have to take up much of you don't have to really take any examples here. Last three digits should be divisible by 8. That is a divisibility rule. So essentially what you do is you take a look at the number 897. This leaves a remainder, when you divide that by 8, it leaves a remainder 1, which means that the closest number should be 896. And again, you can even do the calculation here. You could have simply taken up these numbers and divided them by 8 to see which ones are multiples of 8, right? So that also could have been done. All right, so this one is a relatively straightforward one. Now we're coming into remainders. Okay, now what I want you to do is, I know a number of you will solve this question by, okay, let's solve the question and then we'll see. And then I'm going to give you some tips about this one. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Now, how did you solve this question? The correct answer here is choice D. Tell me how did you go about solving this question? Did you just do the division and get the remainder? Chose a number 207. Okay. Okay. All right. So there are a few of you who simply chose the number 207 and then you divided that by 4 to figure out what the remainder is. Now, here is how I would want you to solve such questions going forward. Okay. So let me walk you through the approach here. How many of you are familiar with this concept? Dividend is equal to divisor times quotient plus remainder. Now, this is the concept that we're going to be truly building upon in this particular session. Okay, so there are three of you who are not familiar with it. So again, quite simply, it says that dividend is equal to divisor times the quotient plus remainder. And again, as we go through this, you will be able to follow along. Now, again, the first step is we translate. What is the remainder when n is divided by 4? So essentially, if I apply the concept and look at this, when when I'm translating, I'm utilizing my conceptual understanding, which is why that 100% conceptual understanding is absolutely critical. So n is the dividend, right? So you need to know what is the dividend. So that's why it's very important to know what is to know 100% of the concepts, right? N is the dividend, 4 is the divisor, so n is equal to 4. Now I've assumed p as the quotient and the remainder is r. And what is it that I need to find? I need to find r. Now what is the what is a property of r that I need to keep in mind? What do I know about r in general? In this case, when the divisor is 4, absolutely r has to be less than 4. That's a very important constraint that you need to keep in mind for such questions. Okay, so we are talking about translate process skill. We are talking about applying constraint process skill, and I want you to make a note of those things right now. Okay, because again, time and again, as we go through this session, all of these process skills are going to come to surface, which is an indication that you need to learn about these process skills. Okay, now now r can be 0 as well. So the person who said 1 is less than or equal to r, you missed out that r can very well be 0, right? Okay, so now this is what we need to find out. Now, what is given to us? Again, we apply the same concept and we figure out what is given to us. We are doing translation again. This number n leaves a remainder 3 when divided by 204. So the divisor here is 204, quotient is q, and the remainder is 3, right? Now, essentially, this equation is given to me. N is equal to 204q plus 3. And I need to find the remainder. And look at this, I have n over here. So essentially, all I have to do is I need to write down this equation in terms of the n here in two parts. One part that is divisible by 4, so that I get my quotient part here, quotient times divisor part, and the other part that's not divisible by 4. See, the r part is not divisible by 4. So that's the thing that I keep in my mind, and I write down 204q in that form, right? 204q can be written as 4 times 51q, right? And what I end up getting is that, okay, 204q, when I write it down, I have it as 4 times 51q, which means this part corresponds to the 4p part over here, and the 3 part corresponds to the r part here. Okay, so all I'm doing over here is I'm visualizing, right? I'm visualizing, and let me get rid of all of this so that I can show you show you once again, right? So what I'm doing over here is I'm simply visualizing what's given to me here, and I know what is it that I need. I need n to be written down into two parts, and I'm repeating my explanation here so that all of you get it. What do I need from this equation? I need n to be in two parts. One part that's divisible by 4, right? 4p means that it's divisible by 4. The other part that's not divisible by 4, right? Because the remainder is less than 4, so it's not divisible by 4, right? So this is what I need. And I have what is given to me is this equation here, n is equal to 204q plus 3. So I try to write this right hand side of this equation in these two parts, and that's what I end up doing. What I get is 4 times 51q plus 3, right? So I didn't really have to do much over here because 204 is already a multiple of 4. So it's already expressed in the form of multiple of 4, right? So that's why I end up getting r is equal to 3. Okay. Now, I have a question here. If n divided by 204 leaves a remainder of 4, would it be different? Absolutely yes. In that case, I will end up writing 3 as, so 3 becomes 4, which means that this entire thing is actually composed of only one part that's divisible by 4, because 4 over here, so what the student is saying is, what if this 3 was 4? So then 4 is also divisible by 4, right? Which means that n is nothing but a multiple of 4, which means that the remainder will be 0. Okay. Now, I have another question. So very good question. I have another question. Why is assuming the number as 204 and going ahead with going ahead is the inappropriate approach? Because that approach actually seems faster. You're absolutely right. Again, spot on. In this question, you could have simply taken the number as 204 and moved forward. What you're doing is you're taking one possible number that meets that equation and you're moving forward with that. You could have done that, but as you go along in this session and as the numbers get more difficult, you will see that that approach is not going to help you solve difficult questions correctly. And that's another thing which is very important for you to realize when you're solving questions on your own, when you're learning things on your own. Certain strategies, certain easier tricks, on easier questions, you can do number substitution. But for you to be able to solve difficult questions correctly, you need to have a structured approach, which is what we are talking about here. Okay? All right, so now let's move forward to the next question. So essentially, if you think about it, we are applying the process skill of visualization. We are understanding what is it that we need, and then we are visualizing that need from what is given to us. Okay, so is everyone clear about this approach? Trust me, you buy into this approach and you're going to see how such a structured approach will help you solve those data sufficiency questions that you solved up front. Okay, another way to think about this is if let's say this question was in the format of a data sufficiency question, would you be able to take up numbers and solve it? Okay, that's something which you need to think about. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and solve this question now. And I want you all to try to apply the approach that we've just talked about. Okay, do not assume numbers, please. Do it in a structured manner. Okay. All right, I'm going to end the poll. Good. Majority of you selected the right answer. Choice A is the correct answer. Now, how did you go about solving this? Did you use the approach that we talked about in the previous question? Much easy. Absolutely. That's really good. Now, for those of you who selected choice D, my feedback to you is you got the approach, but you missed one process skill, and I want you to make a note of that. Okay. So let me walk you through this. Same drill, translating it, okay, utilizing the concept, right? And what you get is n is equal to 5p plus r, but keeping in mind the constraint on the remainder. Again, applying constraints is very, very important. So 14 of you who selected choice D, You did not apply the constraint, and I want you to make a note of that in your scratch pad right now, because that's the thing that you need to work on based on this question. Okay, same drill over here, translating it. And what we get is that, again, how do you write 205Q um, into a part that's divisible by 5 and not divisible by 5? You only get the part that's divisible by 5, which means that 6 is the part which is now left. Now, so remainder cannot be 6, right? Because remainder has to be less than 5. So you can you write down 6 into two parts, one that's divisible by 5, the other that's not divisible by 5. And what you get is remainder is 1. Okay, so now just imagine you've just gone through one question, question number 4, utilizing the structured approach, and you're already able to apply that structured approach to solve questions, right? That's the beauty of following a step-by-step process. And along the way, you're getting feedback as to where you're making mistakes. And that feedback is very, very specific to you. I mean, you know that, okay, you made a mistake, and it's not a silly mistake. How many of you would have classified this mistake, for those of you who selected choice D, and again, for those of you who made this, who said that remainder is 6, or you who could have said that the remainder is 6, how many of you would have classified that mistake as a silly mistake? Quite a few of you would have said, oh, it's a silly mistake. Oh, I didn't consider that remainder has to be less than 5. Now, what's your corrective action in that case? Your corrective action in that case is not really very solid, because whenever you consider something as a silly mistake, you don't pay much heed to it, right? You may write down in your notes that that I selected, that I didn't consider that the remainder is less than 5, but there is no action coming out of that. There is no corrective action coming out of that. Now, when you classify this mistake as I failed to apply constraints, you're giving that mistake a solid name. That name has a corrective action, that you failed to apply constraint. Now, next time when you solve a question, you would consciously look for constraints. Okay, that's the beauty of being able to apply process skills, of being cognizant of these 7 process skills. Okay, does that make sense? And again, as I said early on in the session, before I started the session, you're going to get those learnings from this limited scope session on remainders that you can apply across the board for all of quant. This is precisely what it is: your understanding of process skills, your belief in the process skills. Okay. How is it less than 5? Because it's a remainder. That's the concept over here, and which is where the conceptual clarity needs to come into picture. Okay, here you're getting the constraint from the very concept that you're applying. The constraint is not specified to you in the question statement, and that brings us to another point. There are two types of constraints. One that is present in the question statement. For example, if let's say the question said that n is an integer, or n is a positive integer, n is a non-negative integer, whatever the case may be, right? So again, those are constraints that are specified in the question statement. Then there are these conceptual constraints which come about based on your understanding of the concepts, which again go to the fact that you need to have that 100% understanding of the concepts. Okay. All right. Can you please explain the process after you got 41Q? I'm doing exactly the same thing that I did earlier. What I'm doing is I'm writing 205Q plus 6 in the form such that one part is multiple of 5, the other part is not a multiple of 5. Okay. And again, you don't even need to figure this out. That's why this is grayed out. You don't need to figure this out. All you have to make sure is that, okay, 205Q is actually a multiple of 5. So this part is a multiple of 5. What you're left behind is 6. Now 6 cannot be the remainder, so what you're doing is you're expressing 6 again into two parts. One part that's a multiple of 5, the other part that is not a multiple of 5, and that's why 1 is correct. Okay. So exactly same thing. 6 is equal to 5 times 1 plus 1, because I have to write 6 again. What I'm left behind, okay, another way to think about this is 205Q is a part that's multiple of 5. 6, I have to write 6 again into two parts. One part that's a multiple of 5, the other part that's not a multiple of 5, right? And I write it as 5 plus 1, right? That's what it is then. All right. Okay, so now let's move forward to we're going to do an overall check on your concepts here. If you scored less than 100% in any of these questions, then you need to revise the concept. So I would urge all of you to go through the concepts that are there in the number properties course. Okay. Now, again, you absolutely need to have that level of understanding. Now, I have a question here. How should we express this if the number 205 wasn't a multiple of 5? You're going to see examples of that as we go into the more difficult questions. Again, remember, these were easier questions. These were just warm-up questions, right? So now we're going to go into more difficult questions, 650 to 700 level questions. Okay. Now, what have you learned till now? If you're just done with the warm-up section, tell me, what have you learned till now? Okay. Can significantly improve the score if you work on the concepts, the process of finding remainder, basics, and approach to solve the problem. Good, very nice. Basic concepts are very important. Okay, very good. All right. Need to focus more. Solid approach. My concepts are horrible. That's okay. It's absolutely fine. It's just that realization that you need to work on them, right? Now, there's one person who didn't learn anything at all, and that's okay. Maybe you need more difficult questions to learn the next steps here. All right, so let's get into these difficult questions now. Let me get you the poll. All right, so can you all please click on still solving? All right, let's get going. Last few seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay. All right then. Now this is where we're going to apply the same process, but you're going to see how the application of that process becomes a little bit more involved. Now, in the previous questions, you were given information that you simply translated into the divisibility equation, right? Now here, you're not given another divisibility equation. What you're given is m divided by 30 is equal to 8.2. But the principle remains the same, okay? And again, what you need to figure out is you translate this, m is equal to 15p plus r is less than 15. right? So what you need is think about what is it that you need. Again, I'm following the same exact process. I need to express whatever I have been given into two parts. One part that's divisible by 15, the other part that's not divisible by 15. The part that's not divisible by 15 will give me the remainder. And I have to make sure that that remainder is less than 15. That's the principle that I'm applying here. Now, what's given to me? I've been given that m divided by 30 is equal to 8.2. So what do? I simplify that. M is equal to 30 times 8.2. Now here, I have to be smart about how do I simplify this. I don't need to start calculating 30 times 8.2. What I need to do is I can write 8.2 as 8 plus zero point 0.2, right? And that's what I do, which means that I can write 30 times 8 plus 30 times zero point 0.2. Okay. Now observe 30 times 8 is something which is what? 15 times 2 times 8, right? I'm writing 30 times 8. I can write as 15 times 2 times 8, which means this part over here is divisible by 15. Again, my goal was to have one part that's divisible by 15, the other part that's not. And that's precisely what I'm doing. I know 30 is a multiple of 15. So this entire term, 30 times 8, is divisible by 15. Right now, let me come to the other term, 30 times zero point 0.2. Now, this is where I do the calculation. And what do I get? I get 6. Now 6 is the part that is not divisible by 15, which means that my remainder is 6, and I know that 6 is less than 15, so the remainder is 6. Now, how many of you solved the question using this method here? Again, exact same process. I haven't changed anything here. All I did was I simply took what was given to me, m divided by 30 is equal to 8.2, and I visualized that. I saw what was given, and then based on that, I essentially figured out, okay, how do I split it in two terms? Now, for those of you who didn't use this approach, how did you solve it? Did you do the calculation? M is equal to 8.2 times 30? Okay, do not do that because that's not going to help you. Quite a few of you did the calculation. Okay, so if you solve the question, you were able to solve this question using calculations, but as the questions get more difficult, the calculation is not going to help you. So every time that you solve a question using calculations, always think about this: is there another way in which you could have solved that question? Okay, because again, right now when you're building your skill set, you need to build the skill set with the goal to be able to solve those 700 level questions correctly. And again, remember, the first three data sufficiency questions that you solved, that's your goal. To solve those questions, these calculations are not going to come in handy. Yes, you can solve this question here correctly, but your attempt to solve this question is not going to lead you to your increased ability to solve those 700 level questions. So keep that in mind. Okay. All right. So now that you know how to do this part here, right? You know how to analyze this part here or to simplify this. Let's try to solve this next question without solving. Okay, without doing the calculation, try to use this process because the more you get skilled in splitting, the thing to keep in mind is whatever is given to you need to split it into two parts, and that split comes from what is it that you need. Okay, so again, think about it from that standpoint. All right, so are you guys ready to solve the next question? Okay, all right, so click on still solving, please, and no calculations, please, minimal calculations. All right, sounds good. There you go. All right, last few seconds. I'm so happy to see the poll results here. Okay, I'm going to end the poll here. And it's just so beautiful that when s- as you were solving, as you were getting to the answer, there was all of you were, or I would say majority of you were converging on C. There was no, okay, like, is it A, is it B, is it C? I mean, it was just directly from still solving to that point C, which hasn't happened in the session till now. So really good. And I see that some of you did find this as very incredible. So tell me, how was it to solve this question? How many of you used calculations to solve this question? Tell me that first. How many of you used calculations to solve this question? Good. I am so happy to see that. Do you feel more empowered when you are able to solve a question using a process? Do you feel more empowered? Absolutely. And that is how you should be feeling when you're loving, when you're learning something which is applicable across the board. Okay. So, all right, I'm so happy, you guys. I mean, seriously. All right, this is the point that I was waiting for, and this is the turning point. Question number two is usually the turning point in the session. Okay. All right. So thank you for being with me from the beginning till this point. And again, you will see how now that you have embraced this, now that you know the value of following the approach, you will be a lot more amenable to building upon this approach. Okay, so I really appreciate you guys staying with me, and even though you felt that, okay, when I can solve this question without this approach, so really thank you for that. So again, exactly same thing. M is equal to 30p plus r. So my goal over here is that I have to express m in terms of two parts. One part that's divisible by 30, the other part that's not divisible by 30. And I'm repeating that same exact things, right? So, and now I take a look at this, 15 times 8, 8.2. Now, how do I split this? And this is called manipulation, really. What you're doing over here is you are manipulating this, okay? So 15 times 8 plus 15 times zero point 0.2. Now 15 times 8, I can write this as 15 times 2 times 4. Why am I writing it like this? Because remember, I need to express this in terms of two parts, one part that's divisible by 30. And I know the 8 has a 2 in it, which means that this part is divisible by 30. That's what I'm doing here. Now 15 times zero point 0.2 is 3. So that's exactly it. R is equal to 3. Okay. All right. So this is definitely a GMAT level question. This is a 650 to 700 level question. It's not as yet a 700 level question. Okay. All right. Once the concept and constraint got clear in my mind and came spontaneously, it took seconds only to solve. And that's the beauty of learning a structured approach. Initially, you may feel that it's more laborious, that it's going to take more time. But as you get comfortable with it, because it's learning a new skill, right? But as you get more comfortable with that skill, you end up actually taking much less time to solve the question. Okay. All right. So now let's look at question number three, exact same approach. Let's get going with it. So can you please click on still solving? Exact same approach, but this is going to be a little bit more involved than the previous one. So be more careful about this one. Okay. Don't want to give you a hint, but keep in mind all the process steps that you have solved, that you've used. Okay. All right, last few seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So I did expect bit of complication. Again, as I said, this one is a little bit more involved. So again, don't worry about it. As long as you didn't resort to doing calculations, I'm absolutely fine with you taking time. And that's another thing, as I said, you're building a new skill. So give yourself sufficient time for you to imbibe this new skill. Don't rush through the process. Don't give up on it. Okay. So let me walk you through this solution here. Exact same thing. What is the remainder when m is divided by 30? So in your mind, you should be thinking about this. How I need to express m in terms of two parts. One part that's divisible by 30, the other part that's not divisible by 30, and that part is going to be my remainder. What's given to me is 15 times 9.2. So let me split that up. 15 times 9. Now notice this. 15 times 9 is is not going to be divisible by 30. So what if I split this 9 into two parts, 8 plus 1? And this is all a game of manipulation, right? That's what you're doing over here. So I split 9 as 8 plus 1. Then what I get is 15 times 8. Now I know this part is definitely going to be divisible by 30. Then I get 15 times 1 plus 3. And what this is 18. Okay, so the remainder over here is 18. So just a little bit more manipulation that I had to do. Again, if you keep in mind what the end goal is, by doing this translation over here, by applying that process skill of translation and by applying this concept, what you've done is you have the path to your solution. You know what is it that you expect to do in order to get your remainder. Now you take that understanding over here and you start manipulating it step by step. That's what you're doing. Okay. Now I have this comment over here. 9 can be split into 10 minus 1, then the answer will be minus 12. But then remember, remainder is always a non-negative number. So that minus 12 has to be converted back into a non-negative number, which is going to be minus 12 plus 30. Absolutely, that's what you need to do. So either which way, you are you need to apply the constraints. That's something which is very important, right? You need to apply the constraint. Okay. All right. So good. Very nice. Since the calculation was not too much for 15 times 9, can't we just solve the question? You can. Absolutely, you can. But again, remember, anytime you resort to calculation early on in the process, you are losing that opportunity to learn how to manipulate in order to get to what is it that your approach is, right? And that's why it's very, and again, you can do calculations. I'm not saying don't do calculation, but my only thing is that GMAT doesn't expect you to do calculations upfront, right? Your calculation should be limited towards the end of your solution. Okay. And again, if you end up calculating upfront, then you're losing opportunities to learn, to build your skill set in doing such manipulation. And such manipulations are absolutely vital to solve 700 level questions, because right now this is definitely a less than 700 level question. When we get to more difficult questions, you will see how manipulation skill set is so much important. Okay. All right, so now let's take a look at the overview of these questions. Here we increase the difficulty level a bit more, right? And again, we saw in the first one there was much less manipulation. In the second one there was a little bit more. In the third question there was a bit more manipulation. But overall, overarching theme over here is recognizing what is it that you need, right? And then determining your approach, and then do applying the process skills appropriately in order to get to your solution. That is what we are doing here. Okay. Now let's come to our 700 levels questions, and the first set is going to be problem solving. Now, what I want to first build before I show you the next set of questions, I want to build upon some more conceptual understanding with regards to this concept. Okay, so let's do that first. Um, let's say you've been given this question: what is the remainder when 31 plus 43 is divided by 7? How will you solve this question? Right. So the answer is 4, absolutely. And there are two ways to solving this. Sequence number one is that you calculate the sum and then you divide by 7. There is another sequence that you could do. You could divide each of the individual numbers by 7 and add their remainders, and that's going to give you the remainder of the sum. Any one of these methods is absolutely fine. Okay. Now let's say if you were, so again, it's up to you what you're more comfortable doing, right? For larger numbers, sequence 2 may be more efficient. Why? Because when you're dividing the sum, you will end up dividing much larger numbers. So again, for larger numbers, sequence 2 is better. But what if you were given the question in this form? It's the product. In that case, what sequence would you follow? You would follow sequence number 2, absolutely, right? Because sequence number 1 will become a lot more laborious unless one of the numbers is divisible by 7. Then it's a whole different ball game, right? So sequence number 2 will be more is definitely more efficient. Now, what are we learning from this? Essentially, the concept over here is that you can add and multiply remainders, and I'm going to show you the derivation of that, right? But again, I'm not going to explain that to you here. I want you to work this out on your own after the webinar so that you are 100% confident as to how you can end up adding the remainders and how you can end up multiplying the remainders. Okay, so just walking you through this, essentially what we are doing is we're using the equation dividend is equal to divisor times quotient plus remainder, and we are then doing manipulation here. So I want you to do this out on your own. Okay, definitely, because this is going to give you the confidence in this particular concept. But right now, to go forward in this session, I simply want you to keep this concept in mind that if you have been given a sum and you need to find the remainder, when that sum is divided by 7, you can take the individual entities, divide that by the divisor, regardless of whether it's 7 or not, divide that by the divisor and then add the remainders that you get. Same thing is true for the product as well. Now let's solve this particular question. I'm going to give you the poll. Let's utilize this poll right now. Okay, please click on still solving. Okay. All right, I'm going to end the poll here. I don't want to give you guys as much time for this question. And this is why when I tell you what's going on here, you will understand why I stopped you from solving this question anymore. What is the remainder when 24 cubed times 38 to the power 5 is divided by 3? What do you observe here about the numbers? And that's very important. Spend a couple of seconds just looking at the numbers and trying to make sense out of them. 24 is divisible by 3, which means that no matter what the remainder is when 38 divided by 38 to the power 5 is divided by 3, this entire term is completely divisible by 3. So the answer is 0. So there is nothing to be done here. There's no manipulation, nothing to be done here. Okay. And again, this is not a shortcut. It's just you spending some time looking at the numbers. Okay. You making sense out of what is given to you. And that's very important because the more time you spend on understanding the question statement, the more you will be able to retrieve appropriate concepts from your arsenal of concepts, right? And then retrieving that right concept is very, very important, right? Right now, I know we are talking about divisibility and remainder questions, right? But when you are in the test environment, you don't know whether this question is going to test your ability to understand remainders or whether this is a different kind of uh, question, right? So that's why you have to spend appropriate time just understanding what the question is asking you so that you are able to retrieve appropriate concept. Okay. Absolutely, 38 is not divisible by 3, but look at this. You have a product, right? If I had not told you any of the previous concepts, you would have looked at this and you would have said, okay, 24 times 30, 24 times 24 times 24. 24 is completely divisible by 3, right? You would have written this down as 24 to the power 3 times again 38 divided by 3. When you simplify this, 3 gets cancelled out here, right? And again, if you thought it was the sum, then that's another issue. You're not spending enough time on the question to understand what the question is asking you. You're moving forward too quickly. And that's an issue with which I see with lots of students. They just get to solving the question right away. Spend a few seconds just reading the question statement. That is a very, very, very important process skill. Okay? All right, now let's move on to our next question here. Now here things don't look as easy. So spend the time here because again 25 and 38, neither of those is divisible by 3. Okay, so go ahead and solve this question. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So quite good. The correct answer is choice C. Now tell me, were you able to use the method to solve this? Good. So let's follow this along. Now this expression can be considered as 25 times 38 times 25 times 38 times 25 times 38, right? Now if we calculate the remainder for each of the terms, we can simply multiply that remainder. If we can simply raise that remainder to the power 3, right? Or multiply that remainder 3 times to get the final remainder, right? So let's look at that. 25 divided by 3, what is the remainder for that? 1. 38 divided by 3, what's the remainder? 2. So what we get is 2 cubed, which is equal to 8. Now 8 is not less than 3. Remember, you always have to apply your constraint, right? So I need to express 8 in terms of two parts. One part that's divisible by 3, the other part that's not divisible by 3, right? This is essentially what my remainder equation is, divisibility remainder equation. What I get is the remainder when 8 divided by 3 is nothing but 2. Okay, so 2 is the answer. Okay. So again, it's a slightly more involved application. Why? Because I have exponent here, but again, whatever applies for, again, if you understand what exponents are, you simply have to, you can simply extend the concept of multiplication to exponent as well. Okay. All right. So now let's come to question number. We're going to go into our next section here. Okay, so here again, negative remainders. That's another thing which we're going to talk about. Now, I've talked about the fact that remainders are always non-negative. But in certain cases, our calculations can be simplified extensively if we consider negative remainders. Okay, so let's consider this. So let me explain this to you. You have you when you say 5 divided by 2, you can write this down as 5 as 2 times 2 plus 1, right? Likewise, 8 divided by 3, you can write this down as 3 times 2 plus 2. Okay. But let's say we wrote the divisibility equation for 5 and 2 as 5 is equal to 2 times 3 minus 1. That will also work, right? 6 minus 1, right? Likewise, for 8 divided by 3, what if I wrote the divisibility equation as 3 times 3 minus 1? So here, instead of plus 1, I'm writing minus 1. Why? Because I have chosen to write 5 as 2 times 3 minus 1, 6 minus 1, right? Now, these are what are called as negative remainders. And because especially negative remainders when it comes to minus 1, if you can express a divisibility equation in terms of remainder which is minus 1, then that can help extensively with your calculations. Why? Because minus 1 raised to the power any exponent will either be 1 or minus 1 depending upon the even odd nature of that exponent. Is this point clear? And again, you will need to apply the constraints. Why? Because negative remainders need to be ultimately converted into positive remainders. Okay, so for that, again, you add and subtract the divisor, and then you end up ultimately you need to. Uh, so again, ultimately you need to add back the divisor in order to get to the positive remainder. And again, for some of you, this I may be going a little bit faster. The pace may be a little bit faster. Again, I want you to go, when I share the PDF for this, I want you to work this out on your own. You have this entire slide, work this out on your own, and you will be able to understand that. Okay, can't we use it as positive? Why do we need to use negative? I'm going to show you a question in which you will be able to see why is it that we need to utilize negative remainders. Okay, you're going to see the application of that right away. Now, how do we go from negative remainder to positive? Look at this. We have minus 1 here, right? So all we have to do is add 3 back to minus 1. Essentially, think about it this way. If I write minus 1 in terms of two parts, one part that's divisible by 3, the other part that's not divisible by 3, right? How will I write that? I will write that as, right? So I'm going to write it down as 3 minus 1 over here, right? So I'm going to get 2. So that's how you have to think about it. All right, so now let's take a look at question number 6. And the first part over here, you don't need to solve that. Why? Because you know that the remainder for this part is what? What is the remainder for this part? Quickly take a look at the numbers here. The remainder for this part is 0. So essentially, this question boils down to what is the remainder when 17 raised to the power 7 is divided by 3? And let me give you a little bit of a tip here. Because you focused your energy on observing this, you were able to simplify this question into very simple terms that what is the remainder when 17 raised to the power 7 is divided by 3, right? Because this thing contributes the remainder 0. So you ended up simplifying your question statement extensively. That's the power of of observing what's given to you. Okay. And again, this is a skill which is very handy when it comes to data sufficiency questions. Okay. All right. Go ahead and solve this. Wow, look at the speed at which you guys are answering this question. Amazing. All right, I'm going to end the poll. Yes, the correct answer is 85%. Okay, so as we said, all we have to do is 17 raised to the power 7 divided by 3. We need to find the remainder for that, which means that, again, I can take the 7 out, which means that if I find the remainder 17 divided by 3, and then I raise that to the power 7, I should be able to get my answer. Now, this is where the negative remainder comes in handy. And look at this. If I used the positive remainder approach, then I would have 2 over here as a remainder. I would then need to raise 2 to the power 7 and then divide that by 3 to get my answer. So that's very calculation intensive. Okay. And imagine as the remainder goes up or as your divisor goes up, those calculations become even more difficult. And again, GMAT is not a test of calculations, right? GMAT doesn't need to know whether you can do calculations. And frankly, in today's world, you have all these tools to do those calculations for you. What GMAT is truly testing you on is, do you utilize the right approach given the concepts that you have, given so many approaches that you have, are you able to select the right approach to solve the question? So it's truly your problem solving skills, and that is what you need to build as you go through as you're preparing for the quant. Okay. All right, so coming back to this, 17 can be written as, so over here what you have to identify is, can I write this divisibility equation such that I get -1 as the remainder, because I know that is going to simplify my problems quite a bit. Okay, and yes, you can over here. So what you end up getting is -1 as the remainder, because you're writing 17 as 3 times 6, which is 18, 18 minus 1. So you have -1 raised to the power 7. Now -1 raised to the power 7 is what? -1, right? That's the very nature of -1. And but now you have to so choice A is not the right answer, because your remainder in the GMAT world cannot be less than 0, right? So you convert it back to a positive remainder. How do you do that? You add back the divisor, okay, which is 3 in this case. So -1 plus 3, the correct answer is 2. Okay, and I want all of you to observe one thing here. Look at the accuracy that you guys are able to arrive at for these difficult questions. These are 700 level questions. If this question appeared on the test, this will be a 700 level question. But how are you able to solve this question accurately as a group? Why are you able to solve this? Because you're learning the concepts and you're learning the process skills in the right manner. That's why you're able to solve these questions correctly. And that's the exact approach that you need to utilize for all of quant. Learn the concepts the right way, learn the approach, learn the process skills the right way. Okay? I have a question. If it was raised to the power of 6, would the remainder be 1? Absolutely, it would be 1. And that's the power of basically using -1 as the remainder. The answer is either 1 or -1. And then -1 definitely needs to be converted back into positive remainder. Okay, let's solve this one here. And then we'll go into our data sufficiency questions. All right, I'm going to end the poll here. Amazing responses.
Choice E is the correct answer. And again, exactly same thing. 17 divided by 6. Let's write this down. 16 times 3 minus 1, right? Minus 1 is the remainder. Then add back the divisor, 6 here. You get 5 as the answer. Okay? All right. Now, let's go into our data sufficiency questions. And I'm not going to bring back the poll, but click on still solving. I want you to solve question number 8 once again. With the renewed understanding that you have, I want you to solve these questions again. Okay? All right. Okay, so here is the question. Solve this step by step. Okay, let me tell you one thing before you go into solving this. Whenever you read a data sufficiency question, I want you to spend a lot of time on the question statement. Determine your approach first. Very, very important. Okay, and then once you simplify your question statement, once you know how is it that you need to approach the question to solve it, what is that information that you need from the question, from the individual statements, keep that in mind, and then approach the individual statements one at a time. Very important. Okay, so go ahead and solve this. All right. Tell me this, for how many of you have a better sense of this question? I can compare it to when you solved the question early on in this session. Good, very nice. And I can see the improvement in your responses, and and let me show you the comparison. And I'm going to discuss this. The correct answer here is choice A. And you can see that a lot earlier when you attempted this, more people were leaning towards choice C. Okay, now more people are leaning towards choice A. So as a group, you have improved your accuracy for this particular question. Now, yes, people who've selected choice C, or people who've selected any other choice than choice A, you still have certain gaps, and we will talk about that. But I see that there are quite a few of you who have improved your ability to solve this question. Okay. Okay. So let's solve this one. First step. What is the remainder when a positive integer p is divided by a positive integer m? Now, the thing with data sufficiency questions is that you need to do, again, over here, you're working with variables, right? You're working with unknowns. I won't call them variables. You're working with unknowns here. You don't have definite numbers such as what is the remainder when a positive integer 153 is divided by a positive integer 2, or a positive integer 25. You don't have that, right? And again, that's the whole point of a data sufficiency question. There are these unknowns, and you need to see what relationship, if you're given certain more information in these individual statements, are you able to solve that question, right? So essentially what you have to now do is you need to find p remainder m, and you know that m is always greater than 1 here. It's given that m is greater than 1, right? That's what is given to you. Okay, so that's what you need. Now, what you do is what's given to you over here is p in statement number 1. P is given as m plus 1 raised to the power 8. Now, this is where you apply your conceptual understanding. And what concepts will you retrieve here? What concept will you retrieve here? Tell me, what concept will you retrieve? Yes, p is equal to mq. What else? Remainder, yes, it's the multiplication rule, and it's the fact that you can add or sub-add or multiply the remainders, right? That's the concept that you will retrieve here. And again, that's why retrieving concepts is very, very important. You have all the, right now we have learned a lot of concepts pertaining to divisibility and remainders. But what is that one concept or a couple of concepts that you need to retrieve in order to solve the question? That is the main thing that's the level to which you need to arrive at. Okay. So what you do over here is you apply the concept of the fact that you can add and multiply remainders, which means that p remainder m will be nothing but remainder when m plus 1 to the power 8 is divided by m, which is nothing but remainder when m plus 1 is divided by m, and you are raising that to the power 8, right? So you're applying the concept that you can multiply remainders. Now, what is the remainder when m plus 1 is divided by m? It is nothing but 1. So this is essentially you're translating. You're not doing any calculation. You're essentially are telling, you're in your mind, you're thinking, what is the remainder when I divide m plus 1 by m? Regardless of what the value of m is, the remainder is always going to be 1, right? And that's what you get, 1 to the power 8, and which means that the remainder is 1. Okay, so which means that statement 1 is sufficient. Okay, so now which means that choices B, C, and E have been eliminated. Now you take a look at statement 2. Statement 2 only gives you M, the value of M. You don't know what P is, which means that you cannot solve this question, which means that choice A is the correct answer. Okay. So over here, what we've done is we have applied our understanding of the concept that you can multiply remainders. Okay, that's what you have done. So if the question says, so I have a question. If statement 1 was p is equal to m minus 1 raised to the power 7, can we say that the remainder would be 7 using 1 or 2, making C correct? P is equal to m minus 1 to the power 7. Uh, okay, in that case, you're saying that the remainder is minus 1, but you don't know. Absolutely. Then you can. You're absolutely right. It would be 7 only if m is equal to 8, because yes, then you would have gotten a negative remainder, And then, but you wouldn't know what is the divisor to add back to it in order to get to the positive remainder. In that case, yes, you would need statement 2. You're absolutely right. Okay, so again, but keeping so what you are able to now do is you're able to see, okay, if let's say the remainder was -1, how would you have been able to solve the question utilizing just statement 1? No, you wouldn't have been able to. Okay, so again, as long as you have that conceptual clarity and as long as you follow that structured process, you can solve such questions with utmost ease. Now, for those of you who selected choice C, my guess is that you saw that, okay, here you have a relationship between P and M. You have two unknowns, one equation, and statement 2 is giving you one of the unknowns, which means that you can, combining these two equations, you can solve the question. And that would be a very, very superficial approach. And that's what we call as, falling in a C trap. Okay, so again, you always have to keep in mind that uh, you have to apply the concepts in order to see how much you can extract from that question, from that individual statement. Why are we doing whole raised to the power 8 here? Because that's what is given to you. M plus 1 raised to the power 8 is given to you, right? So you are applying the concept that you can divide m plus 1 by m and then raise that remainder to the power 8 to find the entire remainder. Okay, so you need to go back to that conceptual understanding so that you know why we are doing this over here. Okay, but just think about this. I understand there are some of you who are still not comfortable, and that's okay. I don't expect all of you to be able to follow along completely, but I want you to now, for those of you who are finding it difficult to understand why why are we doing this part here, I want you to go back to the PDF, which I'm going to share with you towards the end of the session. I want you to go back to the PDF and again look at this recording once again. Look at the recording of this session so that you follow along the concepts well, and then you would be able to solve this. And again, remember, I asked you to work out how is it that we can add remainders? Why is it that we can multiply remainders? So when you work that slide out, your conceptual clarity will improve, and then this question will become a lot more straightforward for you. Okay? All right. Where would we get access to this PPT and recording? I will share the PPT with you towards the end of the session, and the recording will be emailed to you within the next few hours. Okay. All right. Let's come back and solve this question now. All right, I'm going to end this poll. All right, so how was your experience with this question now? I'm going to show you the poll for the previous one. Again, compare it to when you solved the question the first time around. So this was your performance. So very few people were able to select choice. Choice A is the correct answer here, but very few people were able to select choice A as the correct answer. Now there are more people converging into choice A. But I know this is a difficult one. So let's look at this one here. The key thing with this question is applying is doing um, very thorough question statement analysis. Okay, and I want you to follow along with this. Actually, let me ask you this. What was your analysis of the question statement before you moved on to into solving individual statements? What did you take with you from the question statement before you moved on to solving individual statements? Okay, is n is even or odd? How many of you took n? How many of you were able to get to the simplification that is n even or odd? Okay, good for those of you who were able to get to that part. And that is the power of doing a very thorough question statement analysis. Okay, and that's a key thing with regards to data sufficiency questions. Okay, so what do we need to find? What is the remainder when 38 raised to the power n squared is divided by 13? Now, how many of you got scared of looking at this expression? 38 raised to the power n squared divided by 13. What's the remainder for that? Right? It's a little scary expression, right? But whenever you see, I'm glad that majority of you were not scared of this, okay? But whenever you do come across certain expression that you feel is a little bit scary, a little bit laborious, just trust yourself. Don't worry about it being overly complex, because remember, if you have the right conceptual understanding, if you have the right process skills, you will not it nothing is going to be unsolvable for you. Okay, that's the key thing. That's the level of confidence that you need to have. Okay, and that confidence continues to get built up as you build your process skill understanding. Okay, now in this case 38, what is the remainder when 38 n squared is divided by 13? What you do is you again apply your conceptual understanding that I can take n squared outside as right, and I can, all I have to find out is what is the remainder when 38 divided by 13 is divided by, when 38 is divided by 13, and then I raise that remainder to the power n squared, right? Now I write 38 as 13 times 3 minus 1. I don't write it as I I don't use positive remainders. I actually, this is a perfect opportunity for me to use negative remainder, and that's what I do. So what I end up getting is minus 1 raised to the power n squared. Now, n squared will, so essentially you have two cases now. Case number one, n is odd. Case number two, n is even. If n is odd, then the remainder is minus 1, which means that my final remainder will be 12. If n is even, then the remainder will be plus 1. So essentially, this question boils down to what is the even odd nature of n? And with that information, I should be able to solve my question. So that's the simplified form of the question statement. Now, what I'm looking for from the individual statements is, can I know for sure if n is even or if n is odd? That's what I'm looking for. Now I take a look at statement 1. N is equal to, n leaves no remainder when divided by 4, which means n is an even number, right? Which means that statement 1 is sufficient. Now let's take a look at statement 2. N, square root of n is only divisible by 1 and itself. Now, what is the number that's divisible by 1 and itself? What is the remainder when n, what is the number that's divisible by 1 and itself? It's a prime number. So this is where I am applying my conceptual understanding of what is a prime number. So I'm translating what is the number is that's only divisible by one, it's one and itself. I'm translating that into square root of n is a prime number, and in that translation I'm using my conceptual understanding, right? So square root of n is equal to prime number. Now I simplify this. What do I get? N is equal to prime number squared. Now this is where I apply my conceptual understanding and I get, oh, prime numbers can be 2, 3, 5, 7. Now all the other prime numbers are odd except for this 2. 2 is the only even prime number, so which means that statement 2 can lead to either an even number or an odd number, which means that statement 2 is not sufficient. So statement 1 is the correct, choice A is the correct answer. So in this question, tell me, um, what was, if you think about it, if you drill down the solution of this question, what it boils down to is your conceptual understanding, right? And your ability to apply process skills and retrieve while retrieving appropriate concepts. Okay. And again, that's the power of the right approach towards quant. And this is a 700 level question, a difficult question for sure. If the question said that n is greater than 2, then absolutely statement 2 will be sufficient. Absolutely. Okay. Why are we not taking 38 n squared as 38 2n? Because it is n squared. It is not 2n. If it were 2n, then it would have been completely different. Then you are dealing with an even number. Then the question would not have even existed because you had all the information in the question statement itself. Okay. How is the remainder 1 when n is even? Because minus 1 raised to the power even power is 1. Okay. So I think there are a couple of you who are getting confused with n squared and 2n. N squared, it is n squared, it is not 2n. Okay. If it were 2n, then yes, regardless of the value of n, this number would have been even. So then the question would not have even existed. Okay, but what it is over here is n squared, right? And that's why that's why you have to take the even odd nature of n into consideration. Okay. All right, so let's now come to, if you have any other questions with regards to this one, post them in the Q&A pod. Okay. So let's now solve the last question over here. And let me remove the poll. Now this one is a little bit more complex question. Okay. I would expect you, what my guess is that statement 2 will be a little bit more complicated for some of you. But again, let's give it a shot. Okay. All right, last few seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. There's an amazing improvement in your performance in this question. So the correct answer is choice D, and previously only about 40% of you were able to select that. And again, you were quite a few of you were not able to solve it, but now I've seen that 63% of you have selected the correct answer. And again, there isn't as much of a selection going on for B, C, and E choices, and quite a few of you have been able to solve this question. So let's go through the detailed explanation of this one. But first, tell me, how is your confidence level in terms of this question? Or I'll ask you this question later on when we come to uh, considering all the three questions. Okay. What is the remainder when 4m is divided by 16? Again, this is the most difficult question of all the questions. Okay. What is the remainder when 4m is divided by 16? That's what the question is. Okay. And again, we know that m is greater than 0 and m is an integer, right? So 4m is equal to 16q plus r, right? That's what we have been able to figure out, right? Now let's take a look at statement number 1. Okay. Statement 1 says that m when divided by 4, m leaves a remainder of 4 when divided by 32 raised to the power 32. So you have a pretty complicated divisor here. Okay. But if you think about it, what is it that we need? And this is where manipulation, and remember, when I was talking about when we were solving easier questions, where a few of you said that why can't we simply do the calculation? 15 times 9 is a very simple calculation. Why can't we do that calculation? Remember what I told you? That you have to recognize those opportunities on easier questions so that you can recognize those opportunities to build your process skills. Look at that process skill in action here. Now here you can't do any calculation whatsoever, right? You have to manipulate because you are working with unknowns here. So what do? What we need is 4m to be expressed as into two parts. One part that is divisible by 16, the other part that is not divisible by 16. That's what we have to do, right? So you keep that idea in mind, and then you follow along your solution. You carry out your solution with that idea in mind. So keeping that in mind, what I have to do is I have to multiply both sides by 4, and that's what I do. Why? Because this is what is given to me. M is equal to 32 to raised to the power 32k plus 4. But I need 4m, right? That's what I need for my question statement. So that's what I do. 4m is equal to 4 into this part here, right? Now, what do? I have to express this into two parts. One part that's divisible by 16, the other parts that's not. And when I observe this, look at what I get. 42 times 32, this is definitely divisible by 16. Right? Sorry, 4 times 32 is definitely divisible by 16. 4 times 4 is definitely divisible by 16. So essentially, this entire part, this entire term over here is divisible by 16, which means that the remainder is 0, which means that statement 1 is sufficient. Okay. Now, so again, over here, the main point is those manipulation skill set that you are building while solving easier questions, that is coming out handy when you're solving data sufficiency questions, when you have no other choice but to manipulate. Okay, but to apply those process skills. Okay. Now, let's take a look at statement 2. Statement 2 is a little bit more complicated, as I said. M cube is divisible by 16. Okay, so now this is where you have to retrieve appropriate concept, and here we are retrieving the concept of prime factorization. So I'm expressing m. Now if m cubed is divisible by 16, this means that m is an even number, right? That's the inference that I'm drawing here. Okay, m cube is divisible by 16, which means that this m is an even number, which means that I can express m as 2 to the power a into other prime numbers raised to the power their appropriate raised to the appropriate powers. Now what's given to me is m cubed. So let me cube both sides. Now when I cube both sides, what do I get? M cubed is equal to 2 to the power 3a times all these other prime numbers raised to the appropriate powers. Now I know m cubed is divisible by 16, which means 2 to the power 3a, uh, which means that, again, 16 is what? 2 to the power 4, which means 3 to the power 3a will be greater than or equal to 4, right? Again, all I'm saying is m cubed is divisible by 16, which means that there has to be a 16 over here. If there has to be a 16, this means that 3a has has to be greater than or equal to 4, because 2 to the power 4 is 16, which means a is greater than or equal to 4 to the 4 divided by 3, which means the minimum value of a is equal to 2, which now means that m is nothing but 2 squared something, right? Which means that m is 4m will be 4 times 2 squared, right? Something followed by something, right? Which means 4m is nothing but 16. It is a multiple of 16, which means remainder is 0, which means that statement 2 is also sufficient. Okay. Now, again, I know some of you will not get statement two, because we are applying the concepts of prime numbers here as well, and we are drawing certain inferences. Okay, so I want you to first revise your concepts of prime numbers, because no matter how much I try to explain that over here, in the absence of that complete conceptual understanding, it's going to be hard for me to explain. Again, I think by this time around, you should have realized the importance of knowing the concept so very well. Okay. Now, again, I have a question. Why did we consider m to be an even number? Again, that's an inference that I'm drawing based on the fact that m cubed is divisible by 16. 16 is an even number. So if m cubed is divisible by 16, this means that m is also an even number, right? So I'm drawing that inference. That's a process skill that I'm applying over here. Okay. All right. So the correct answer here is choice D. Now I'm going to share the PDF with you, so you will have the chance to go through this solution in detail once again. But the things that I want you to understand is that GMAT Quant can be mastered very easily. Okay, and I want to share a few stories with you, so that success stories with you, so that you understand that it's something which is very doable. Now, this first success story is for people who think they are really good in GMAT Quant, and that's really good, right? And I want you to definitely take the time in reviewing the verified review of Krish on GMAT Club. Now, Krish had always done well in quant, but he was stumped by the GMAT. He constantly faltered on GMAT questions, falling in familiar traps, and frustrated with his lack of progress, he decided to change his approach. And that's when he started following this methodical approach that's based on that 100% clarity in concepts, that based on following the process skills. And he changed his approach towards data sufficiency completely. And after making these changes, he was able to improve his score to Q51, and that's the highest possible, scoring a 740. Okay, so again, very, very important to understand that regardless of the level that you are at, if you follow the right methodology, you will be able to get to your target score. Okay. Now, this second one is a story of a South American, and his name is Leonardo, and he had not been excellent with GMAT Quant, and he was stuck at Q45 despite trying really hard. He needed a very high quant score because he wanted to apply to finance-focused schools such as NYU and Wharton, as well as Stepper. Okay, so again, keeping that goal in mind is very important, and then working towards that goal. Now, to improve beyond Q45, he adopted a methodical approach. He started consciously focusing on constraints. Again, the stuff that we saw in the session today, you need to apply constraints. You need to identify constraints. And again, applying constraints is one of the process skills that you need to work on. Okay. And once he had the approach right, he made extensive use of the tools such as Quant Scholaranium, because through Quant Scholaranium, he was able to isolate the areas that he needed to improve upon. And again, it's not learning or preparing for GMAT um, is is a progressive process. You don't get to your target score in one shot. It's an iterative process, and in this iterative process, you need to get that right kind of feedback so that you know what is it that you need to work on. In this session, we as you were solving easy questions, as you were going into more difficult questions, you saw that I was asking you, I was probing into why you made the mistakes. That is something which you need to do. You need to have a platform that gives you the right kind of practice, that gives you right kind of solution so that you can figure out why is it that you made that mistake. And then based on the reason, assigning that causality is very important. And based on the reason why you faltered, you need to then implement the right corrective action. That's what Leonardo was able to do through Scholaranium. And because of his good quant score and excellent verbal score, he was admitted to Wharton, Stern, and Tepper. Okay. The third story is of an individual who was extremely weak in quant. His starting score was Q30, okay, a mere 20 percentile. Mazibar, which is his BTG, Beat the GMAT forum name, spent a ton of time reading through quant books, but he was not able to improve. Now, he benefited from the progressive learning architecture at e-GMAT, in which he was able to cement his basics before taking on difficult questions. Okay, and in case his basics were not strong enough, he was given appropriate feedback. Now, because of the quizzes that are built into each file, he was able to leverage data to help him, and that's very important, utilizing the data to help you what is it that you need to do next. Okay, and Mazibar was able to improve to Q45, which is 59 percentile in quant, and that was a huge improvement from a 20 percentile to a 59 percentile. Okay, the last story here is Guillermo's story, and that's an amazing story of an individual who had an extremely strong determination to study at top B schools. Now, Guillermo started at Q38, which is coincidentally 38 percentile on GMAT Quant. Now, he also realized that he needed that stellar quant score to get an admit from Wharton and GSB Chicago, and the only way to improve from such a low score was to truly focus on learning, which he did using the video lessons in the course. Okay, he was short on time, so he utilized analytics in Quant Scholaranium to isolate the areas where he needed most help. And he, like Leonardo, he utilized the custom quizzing feature in Scholaranium to ensure that he did improve upon in those topics. Okay, and he actually received an admit from Wharton. Okay, but again, if you think about it, at Q38 initially, Wharton, which is a quant focused school, seemed like a distant dream, but he was able to get to his dream school once he applied the right process in order to improve in quant score. Okay, improve his quant score. So again, to ace GMAT quant, focus on learning the right concepts, learning concepts the right way. That 200% clarity in concepts is very, very essential, and adopting good habits. By adopting good habits, what I mean is that utilizing those process skills appropriately, building your ability to apply those process skills. That's very, very important. Okay, so again, ensure that you have 200% clarity in concepts, ensure that you solve questions in a step-by-step fashion. Become an active reader of the question statement. Spend that extra few seconds on the question statement. In DS questions, especially, you need to spend a lot of time on the question statement and you need to simplify it extensively before you even approach the individual statements. Trust the test maker. He's not going to throw anything at you that you cannot handle. And finally, trust yourself. If you're doing, if you're preparing for quant in the right manner, you have everything in your arsenal to solve any of the problems that are posed. Okay. So as next steps, what I would recommend is for those of you who are not as yet e-GMAT students, take a look at all the number properties concept files that are available to you in the free trial. Okay, and then definitely solve practice questions that I'm going to share with you in the PDF, and solve number properties questions that are available to you in your free trial of Scholaranium. For those of you who are e-GMAT students, make sure that you have a solid study plan and make sure that you utilize the quant course in the right manner. Make sure that you focus on your stage one learning, then go into stage 2, wherein you cement your concepts and your process, and then into stage 3, which is your test readiness. Okay. Now, I am going to share this PDF with you, and there are going to be questions that you can, there are two practice questions, two additional questions with detailed solutions. So definitely solve those after you review the recording of this session once again. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now share with you uh, which one is this one? Let me just see. Okay. Now this is another PDF which is on, so the PDF that I've shared over here is a different PDF which is with regards to process skills, and I absolutely want you to go through that process skill file. But let me also share the PDF with you with for this particular session. So give me 1 second here. So all the process skills that I explained to you here have been detailed out in this session. In the PDF, it says in number properties process skills session. And then this one over here, number properties 2 session PDF, this is the session PDF for this one, for the session that we conducted here. All right then. So with this, we've come to the end of this session. I would appreciate if you could give us your feedback. What did you like in this session? What did you learn in this session? That's really very important for us. Frankly, for me, uh, I saw a turning point in this session at question number 2. After we did the warm up section, I saw that you were able to now understand the core aspects of preparing for quant, conceptual understanding and applying the process skills. And again, this is what you're going to see in the e-GMAT quant course as well, right? So if you understand that, really, I mean, I want you to really embrace that approach so that you can get to your target score. In fact, we are right now working on our second generation quant course, and let me share this post with you. We will be launching that pretty soon. Um, I'm just getting that post here. All right. I'm going to add that over here, web links. All right. So again, click on process skills. This is a mini course that we have created on YouTube. So definitely look at that process skill mini course. That would help you a lot. Okay, and then Quant 2.0 course. Uh, that's an I it's a starting of an announcement of our course. So definitely take a look at what's coming. And again, the stuff that you saw in this session, it's considered the Quant 2.0 course to be 10x more effective than this session. So if you enjoyed this one, you're going to learn tremendously a lot more information from Quant 2.0 course. Again, our current course is built on all these principles. So definitely, if you want to start preparing for quant the right way, think about enrolling in, definitely consider enrolling in the quant course. All right, then. Thank you very much. I appreciate all the wonderful comments from you all. It was a wonderful experience conducting this session. And thank you for staying along with me in on your Sunday evening or your Sunday morning. Truly appreciate that. Thank you very much and good luck. Let us know if you have any questions. Write to us at support@e-gmat.com or payal@e-gmat.com.